everyone. Welcome to Art Party. We're so excited to have you. Sorry if that pose was scary. We were just trying to show you how serious we were about making some art today. So, real quick, I'm going to get some house rules going real quick for us. So, this is a recorded space. That's for your benefit. We will release the recording later on so you have access to it. But please feel free to leave your camera off if you feel if that makes you feel most comfortable. We'd love to see what you're working on, but if that makes you feel most comfortable, that's more than fine. Feel free to take breaks at any point, and then I will be running a chat. I'll be running the chat, so if you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to reach out. I'll be giving links and instructions as Molly is doing her stuff. And if you're like, who's Molly? That's our instructor today. So take it away, Molly.
All right, thank you, Gabe. Nice exit. So welcome everyone to Art Party. We are going to be covering a lot today. We are going to be talking about a contemporary artist named Roberto Lugo. We're going to be looking at art. We're going to talk about art. We're going to do some drawing. We're going to do some demos. We're going to make some art. And that's a lot of stuff to do in 1 hour. So wherever you get to in this process is awesome. If you get partway through and you're done, step away. We'll be able to get you the instructions to finish. If all we do today is learn some techniques, then you have those tools to continue your work on your own. We're also using air dry clay today, so please keep your clay wrapped up until it is time to use it, because that will start drying out on us. That also means if at some point you are working with your clay and you need to pause, let's slide it right back into that Ziploc bag to keep it sealed up nice and tight. So, to get started, we're gonna pull up a slide of the artist that's inspiring this workshop today. Coming right up. So this artist's name is Roberto Lugo. He is a contemporary artist, which means that he is alive and making work right now, maybe even literally right now as we're speaking. And he's a ceramic artist, so he works in clay. And clay is a super old, traditional medium that he encodes with different layers of pop culture, with different types of portraiture to make it contemporary and to talk about things that are happening in our world right now. So can everyone see that slide? Thumbs up if we can see it. I think so.
Yes.
Great. So this piece of artwork is called Colin and a Queen. This is by Roberto Lugo again. And we're just going to take a minute and we're going to talk about this piece of artwork. So we're going to start by looking at the form, which is the shape of the artwork that we're looking at. Does that remind anyone of anything? Feel free to pop it into the chat or unmute yourself and shout it out. Has anyone seen an object that might be that shape? We can answer even if it seems really obvious. A jar, yes, it's a jar. Does anyone else have an idea of, oh, actually, we have a different slide up. We have a slide that's Basquiat and Bill Taylor, which is also a jar. Does anyone have an idea of where in history we might have found a jar like this? A vase. I see a vase as well. Thanks, Rosie.
Ancient something. I don't know, maybe
Awesome.
to carry water or something.
Yes, ancient. So this is a really old art form. These jars, most of the jars that Roberto Lugo makes are referenced from ancient Greece. And these were objects that people used in their homes, but they were also used to tell stories. So these are vessels that tell mythological stories. So images on them are often of heroes and gods and goddesses, many of whom we've probably heard stories about. So this is a great start. We've kind of laid our historical base for this project. So does anyone recognize the figure on this vase? It's okay if we don't. So this is an artist whose name is Jean-Michel Basquiat. He was a famous artist working in New York in the 80s, a black pop artist who was working also along the sides of like Andy Warhol. And kind of in that type of artwork, he was pulling from street imagery, he was pulling from personal stories, and there was a lot of artwork at that time that was kind of like leveling the playing field. We had artwork that we considered high artwork, and artists wanted to make it accessible to everyone. So thinking about that, do we have any ideas of why Roberto Lugo might have put him on this vase that traditionally talks about heroes and gods and goddesses?
Maybe because he's a person who wants to be remembered.
Exactly. He's a person who wants to be remembered. And this is also our contemporary artist, Roberto Lugo, saying that this is a person who is worth being remembered. And we can expand that out. When we're making our artwork today, we're going to be doing portraiture that can be yourself. that can be someone who's important to you, that can be a pet, that can be a special object. And we're gonna bring that same spirit of the fact that we are putting this image, maybe of ourselves, maybe of someone else, into our clay. We are saying that we are all our own heroes or gods or goddesses, and we are worthy of being put into our artwork. And this is something that Roberto Lugo does in a lot of his artwork. He puts portraits of himself, of family members. He uses portraits of anonymous photos from the 1800s. He uses pop culture references. And by bringing those people all together into this one medium, he is saying that we all should be put onto these special pieces of art. So let's look again at this vase. And does anyone see any colors or patterns or shapes that remind them of anything they've seen or that spark any sort of emotion?
Flag, kind of flag around the circle. Flowers, waves.
Awesome. So those are all really great things that we saw on that vase. And those are all ideas of imagery and patterns that might be representative of someone. So that means they are a little piece, like a symbol that might represent a story that we're telling about this artist. So as we're working, and maybe as you're making a self-portrait, you can think about what are some simple shapes, symbols, or colors that represent you or your person that you are making this artwork about. So something that we're going to be doing during this project is we're going to be making patterns with different objects. So I have given you all, we have sent you these little modeling tools. We have wood modeling tools that are great for using in clay. But this also gives us the opportunity to imprint different types of patterns and objects into our work. So we're going to do a brief scavenger hunt. And you're going to go around your home surroundings, wherever you are, and I want you to find 1 to 3 objects. I have a fork and I have a shell. Objects that either mean something to you or that you think could make an interesting shape if you pressed it or dragged it into clay. During that time, we also want to get a cup of water because we're going to need some water to make this project. So we're going to throw up a timer. Or does anyone have any questions before we break for that? I just threw a lot of info at you. Ready to scavenge? No? Jess?
Looks like we have a question in the chat, maybe?
We have a question in the chat.
Yes.
What's our questions? We can give everyone a moment to type it out.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great question if you want to put something that is soft and squishy like a stuffed plush. So this is something that's going to get some clay on it. Clay washes out, but it is really good to consider that maybe you don't want to get clay on a stuffed plush. But we also have the ability to do some drawing. So if you have an image, like if you want to draw a picture of that at some point, we'll be able to do that later. Thank you for that question. Do we have any other questions or are we ready to go? All right, I think we're ready to start that countdown. So we're going to put 3 minutes on the clock. Go find 1, 2, or 3 objects and a glass of water and come back and join us. All right, do we have everyone back? Maybe we'll give a few more seconds just to let everyone rejoin us. And while we wait, does anyone have a special object they'd like to share that they found?
Sure.
All right.
So I'm going to use the back end of a pencil
Awesome.
for like little circles. I found an apple decor for like little circles.
I like that.
And this is what we use to clean out our garlic press.
That's very
It's
cool.
like,
Is that like a tiny
almost
little
like
brush?
a Barbie hairbrush.
A Barbie hairbrush garlic press cleaner. That's
Yes.
awesome. I saw that Gabe found a key. I again have my fork and my shell. All right, if we are ready to move on, this is a part of the artwork where we are gathering all of our materials and all of our references. So we are going to next step into a drawing portion of that phase. So now that you've found your objects, you can just set them aside right where you can find them a little later. And thinking back to the artwork that we just looked at, there was a portrait on that vase. And that portrait was kind of the central figure that our artwork was about. So we are going to now choose who our portrait is going to be of. It can be a self-portrait, which is yourself. It can be a portrait of someone else. It can be your pet. It can be a special object. It can be a character that you like on TV. It can be someone famous. It can be anyone you want. And we're going to do some drawing exercises to draw our characters. I know that sometimes when someone springs this on you and says, hey, can you draw a self-portrait, that can be a little intimidating. I know that I would have some trouble with that. So I'm going to show you all a few different options for drawing. We can do what's called a contour drawing. Maybe, can you guys see this, or should we switch to the overhead? We're good?
Maybe switch to the overhead.
All right, we're going to switch to the overhead. This is a contour drawing, which is a line drawing. My lovely assistant Gabe did some drawings of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, his personal hero, so that's what we're going to be looking at right now. So a contour drawing is just a line drawing. You can see that there's no shading, there aren't a whole lot of details. It's pretty fast, it's pretty loose, it's not exactly correct. That is one option. Another option we can do is tracing. So that means that we can, if you have your phone on you and you want to take a quick selfie, you can then lay your tracing paper on top and just draw right over those lines. When you're tracing a face, remember that the more lines you trace, the older that face starts to look. So if you start tracing all of those lines and creases and bags, you might age yourself a bit, which is also totally okay. Other options are to do more of a cartoon style. So that means you can pick a few features that are really prominent and you can emphasize those, and we again don't have to worry about being too specific. And then Gabe had to show off a little bit here, and he did a representational drawing with shading. No one needs to do that unless you really feel like doing it. But to warm up, what we're all going to do together is called a blind contour drawing. Has anyone here ever done a blind contour drawing? I see at least one hand, Rosie. I see one from Gabe. So a contour drawing, again, is just a line drawing, and a blind contour means that you are not looking at your hand the entire time you are drawing. So I'm going to get my piece of tracing paper in front of me. I'm going to give you a quick little demo, and then we're all going to take 1 minute and we're going to do this together. This is a great way that artists warm up when they are drawing. It kind of gets your hand flowing, it gets your brain moving, it gets us out of being really specific and tight with our details to just get something on the paper. And this might even be the portrait that you choose to use in your final piece of artwork. So I'm going to look at myself in my screen. I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to put my hand on my paper, and I am not going to lift my pencil up the entire time, and I'm going to try to draw every detail that I see in my face. So here you guys can see me that I'm staring at my screen. I'm going to start with my eyes. I'm going to give an eye. I have an eyeball, an iris. I know that I have some eyelids and some... Oh, now I can... John, can you flip me back to my face? There we go. I can see myself. That was cheating. Now I'm going to go down to my nose and maybe draw some nostrils, my nose ring, over to the other side and back up. I'm going to go over to my other eyeball now. And you see, this whole time I'm looking at you, and I'm not too worried about what my paper looks like. I'm going to go over and draw some ears. And when you're doing this, you really are looking at your face, and you want to pick up the own details of what you're doing. So we're not doing just a generic smiley face. You're looking at the shape of your face, the shape of your lips, the shapes of your eyes. And we're going to jump in. If anyone has started this, that is awesome. If you haven't started yet, my pencil just ran out. This is a great time to get started. And we're going to take just about 1 minute, and we're going to finish these up. All right, John, I'm pretty much done with mine, so you can flip it over to my paper so people can see what I've got. Woo! Thank you, Carrie. All right, let's give another 30 seconds. Gabe, can you give me a holler when 30 seconds are done? Awesome. This is quick and loose and fun. Remember, we're not looking at our hand. Everyone should be looking right at their face on the screen the whole time.
Why did you draw your mouth like that?
Why did I draw my mouth like that?
You're like, oh!
That's a great question. Because I wasn't looking at my hand, I thought I was drawing my mouth how I looked with my mouth closed. But
That's good.
This is pretty expressive, so I'm pretty happy with this. This might actually be what I use in my artwork. I think I'm pretty happy with my self-portrait. Yeah, let's hold them up if you feel comfortable and see what we got. These are awesome. Gabe there was lying with his contour. There's no way he did that with his eyes closed. Great work, everyone. How did that feel? Did that feel kind of funny? Was it fun? Does everyone feel a little loose?
I liked it.
Yeah, this is like one of my favorite ways to draw because I don't have to worry about how the end result looks. And sometimes you end up with something that is like way more expressive and funnier than you thought you'd start with. All right, so we're gonna do some clay demos and then we are gonna have some nice work time. So everyone in their packets should have some air dry clay that is all wrapped up. Once again, this is air dry clay, so as we unwrap it, it's going to eventually start to dry out on us. So we are going to set our drawings to the side. And I'm going to give you some clay demos. So the pieces that we looked at as our example were vessels, which means they are something that's a container. We're going to be working flat just as a tile because we have just enough time to work that way. But if you are someone who has used clay before and wants to take your time, do a pinch pot, do a coil pot, that is your choice. But I'm going to be showing you how to work flat on a tile. These have been nicely laid out for us. So you can choose that this is the shape of your tile and set it aside, and that is good. Ways that you can roll out slabs. So a slab is a flat piece of clay. You can grab something that is cylindrical, like my water bottle, a rolling pin, and you can start rolling. I'm going to stand up to do this. And you want to roll, when you are rolling out clay, we want to roll in every direction. So something to think about when you're using clay, we like to imagine it as molecules that are all together and they're all holding hands. And our job when we are shaping clay is to start stretching those molecules. So they can keep holding hands and they can keep stretching, but if we pinch it, if I got here and I pushed down really hard, I'm going to kind of start to break those molecules. So we want to think about stretching instead of pushing straight down. Another way, which is a very fun way to make a slab, if you happen to start with a ball and you don't have a nice cylindrical object to roll with, I'm going to show you how to throw a slab of clay. So this is going to get a little loud for a second, but you're going to start with a ball, and then you're going to pound it kind of flat. And now I have kind of my mushy flat piece of clay. And to throw it, I'm going to stand up while I do this, but you're going to watch my hands. I'm going to throw it down and kind of pull it towards myself. And I'm going to keep rotating and throwing it down and pulling it towards myself. And that's going to start stretching your clay out into a flat blob. You can flip it over so you're doing it from multiple directions. Both of these are great ways to make a slab of clay. So either rolling or throwing. All right, and you want your slab to not be too thick, maybe about, let's see, we'll get the overhead going again. About that thick, maybe about 1/4 of an inch or so. If it's super thick, it'll still dry, it's just gonna take a long time. If it's super thin, it might be a little flimsy when you start to pick it up and move with it. But something that feels comfortable to you for handling is great. Now I have this blob shape that I threw. I could choose to keep it that way or I could choose to shape it. So we have these modeling tools. This flat one here is great for cutting your clay, using it just like you'd use a knife. I like to hold mine like a pencil, and you have this nice, there we go, flat edge for cutting. So I'm gonna choose to cut maybe just a diamond. I think that's a nice shape. And now, with my extra clay, I'm gonna ball this up and I'm gonna put it right back in my Ziploc bag so it doesn't dry. And I'm just gonna be throwing these demos at you. If you're not caught up with me, that's okay. We're gonna pause and we're gonna take some working time once I get through a few demos. How are we doing? Do people feel comfortable? Awesome. What was the question? A hole in the middle of yours. Yes, you can push it around, absolutely. You could take a little extra pinch of clay and just squish it into that hole. Clay loves to stick to itself. So that's a great question, thank you for that. All right, so because we're using our, sit down so you can see me again. Because we're doing portraiture, and we have done our portraits on transfer paper, you will have time to do a separate drawing if you don't want to use your blind contour, but I'm going to show you this transfer using my blind contour. And mine's gonna not even fully fit on there, but that's okay. So you'll have your pencil side up on your tracing paper of whichever type of drawing you choose to do, and you're gonna lay that so that the pencil side is down. So we want pencil onto our clay. Maybe we can get the overhead on this. And you're just gonna rub the back. And this pencil that is sitting on the surface of your clay, of your paper, is going to transfer right onto that clay, and that's going to be a guide for the rest of our artwork. So this way we can think back to that vase we saw of Roberto Lugo's with that portrait of Jean-Michel Basquiat right in the center. And this gives us a nice drawing guide so we don't feel like we have to draw blind into our clay. So when I peel that up, my pencil lines are on there, and I can use that as a guide. Yes, thank you. This is just a demo. Don't feel a need to use your original drawing that you did if you want to take your time and do a different drawing. And then we're going to carve into it. So once I have my lines on there, I have this pencil right here, this wood modeling tool that I'm going to use like a pencil. And I'm going to choose to draw into my line just because I know these are just pencil. So if I decide to add paint later, these lines might disappear. So just like you would drawing, you're going to go in and start tracing some of these lines. Again, I'm just giving demos to give you some time to work, so we will go back over and we'll set you loose on your artwork in a few minutes. I'm not going to sit here and make you guys watch me do this whole thing. Something you'll notice that happens as you're drawing into your clay with your modeling tools, you'll start to get these little beads of clay on there. Feel free to just pick those right off and set them aside. They'll dry up. If you feel like your clay is getting super crumbly, you can also take this little wooden tool and dip it into water, and it will give you a bit of a smoother line. All right. Do you guys want to pause and get to this point, or should we move on to our next demo? Let's do a little pause. We'll give a few minutes to work, and then I'll show you our next technique that we're going to learn. Do we have a question? Someone has a raised hand.
Yes, I have a question. Sorry, I was about 10 minutes late. Is it any special pencil that we need to draw with, or just any old?
Any old pencil will work. We have tracing paper that we've drawn onto. So we started off by doing what's called a blind contour, which is a drawing of your face without looking. Yeah.
Got that. So, okay, great. So, and are you going to show us a couple different options, or?
Yeah, so we have blind contour is what we all did together. Some other drawing options are.
You showed me that. I saw that. Yeah, those are great. Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome. Maybe we can even get some of these on the overhead so you can take a look at what's going on there.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Once the clay is rolled out, we're shooting for like about 1/4 of an inch, but it doesn't have to be precise. I have some spots that are a little thicker. Let's see, I'll hold this up again so you can see with my hands kind of the thickness of my slab. If anyone has any questions at any point, give us a holler. If anyone needs help with drawing, we have Gabe at the keyboard. He is an artiste. He can help us with drawing. We can talk it through. I know I just asked you to do a whole lot of work in one go, so we're going to give you some time. Gabe, who did you choose to draw?
Oh, I chose to draw Senor Jackie Chan, of course.
Of course, why did you choose Jackie Chan?
Because I draw him every day.
Ah,
That's how I got good at portraiture. I do it every day.
yes.
Practice, practice, practice.
Awesome.
Does anyone have, like... Wait, you're doing a self-portrait.
I am doing a self-portrait. Does anyone have something other than a self-portrait that they're doing? Would anyone like to share any of those thoughts?
I did my dog, who's sitting next to me.
A dog, awesome.
I'm doing her and she's doing me.
Oh, you have a live model. That's awesome. That's a great thing to have in art. So again, the steps that we have covered, we did our drawing. I chose to stick with my blind contour because I loved it. We rolled out our slab or we threw our slab. Those were two ways to get our flat piece of clay. We carved a shape in our slab. You can keep it exactly how it is or cut a specific shape, and then we transferred. So those were a bunch of steps. You guys are doing a great job. All right, we're gonna take a few more minutes to work and then I'm gonna give you the next demo, which does not mean that you need to be done with this piece. I just wanna be able to let people move along who are ready to move along. So maybe we can pull up that slide of the artwork and we'll spend about 2 more minutes and then I'm gonna show you the next technique. So we can come back and I'm going to show you a few more demos. I've been working away carving my line drawing into my piece of clay. And I haven't totally finished that yet, and that's okay if you are still at this phase or even before then, or if you're totally caught up. And we're going to do some hand building. In clay, there are a lot of different ways to build out dimension. And we're going to do some really simple things. We're going to do some coiling. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my clay out of my bag, so I have my nice wet little squishy ball of clay. And I'm going to roll a coil. And what I'm going to start to do is with the palm of my hand, sorry, I'm getting used to where this camera is. I'm going to use the palm of my hand. When I start to use my fingers, it makes me kind of press into the clay, so your palm is a great way to roll. And you're going to just slowly, lightly get that clay rolling out. And again, how I talked before about spreading out our molecules. So I don't want to be pushing into my clay, I want to be rolling it. And once I get to a nice long piece, I'm going to go in with both of my hands and I'm going to spread my fingers nice and wide. Sometimes it feels good to get your fingers a little wet for this part, so I'm going to dip them in water. That was a little too wet. I'm going to wipe it off on my shirt. So when you have your clay, as we roll, we have our fingers spread out nice and wide, and I'm going to slowly be rolling and pulling my fingers away from each other. And I am stretching that log out into what's called a coil. These can be all different widths. If you want a really thick chunk of clay, you can keep it thick. If you want it thin, you're going to keep rolling and stretching and stretching and stretching. This is a technique that sometimes looks really easy and can sometimes give you a little bit of trouble. If you're at the point where your coil has kind of flattened itself out, you can go in there with your fingers and kind of pinch it back into a shape that rolls a little bit more. Sometimes if we press too hard, it's difficult to roll it. So we're gonna roll and spread our fingers out. Roll, roll, roll. I'm gonna stop right about here because I like that thickness. And this gives me a lot of options. I can either start cutting it into like little bead shapes that maybe I'll add. These kind of look like petals to me. Looking back at that vase, I think we saw some flowers. Maybe I want to make some flowers. Maybe I also want to use my coil as a drawing tool. So I'm going to bring my slab back out here and think about maybe I'll make my mouth stand up instead of how I carved into it. So when we are attaching clay to clay, we're going to do a technique called scoring and slipping. Scoring is carving and slipping is using wet clay. So to score, you take your piece of clay and whatever side is getting attached to the other piece, you are going to rough it up. What we're doing is we're opening up these little gaps in our clay for the other piece to kind of meet it in the middle and bond itself together. So I'm gonna rough up my coil, and then I'm also gonna go and do the same thing on my slab where I wanna stick that coil down. I'm gonna carve in all different directions to make kind of a mushy, rough texture. And that is the scoring part. And slip is a term we use for wet clay. We're just gonna use water to make our slip. Sometimes in ceramic shops, they have a bucket where they put all their scraps and they throw it in with water and you have a big bucket of mush. But I'm gonna just take my finger and dip it in water. I'm gonna get both of those surfaces wet so it's kind of slimy. And then I'm gonna lay my coil on and I'm gonna really kind of push down with my fingers where I can kind of feel that clay grabbing itself. And I'm gonna keep doing that process along this one line that I chose. So this is totally optional if you feel like you wanna be building your clay up instead of carving into it, which was our first technique that we did. So again, I'm just gonna rough up all of my surfaces. And come in with my water, which is we're calling our slip, and adding it on there and pushing down nice and firmly. So I'm choosing to do this technique as part of my portraiture. If anyone on their slab has extra, we call this negative space, what's around the object that we're drawing, this is where some patterns might come in. So maybe I want to make some little balls. I'm going to take a piece of clay and roll it in between my palm to make a ball of clay. And I'm going to score and slip that right on. This is another decorative technique. You guys also did this lovely scavenger hunt before and found things like keys and pencils and apple cores. And this is a point where you can start thinking about how you might want to use those pattern makers. So if there is a spot somewhere on there where you want to make a pattern, you can take your object and just press it on. Sometimes if I'm not sure how my piece is going to work out and I don't want to go straight into my final piece of artwork, I take a spare piece of clay and just kind of squeeze it flat. And that's great to make a little test tile so we can see how that shell works, or maybe how my fork can create some different patterns. And thinking back to the artwork that we saw at the very beginning, our patterns can serve lots of purposes. They can be aesthetic and decorative, which means they are there to just kind of enhance the beauty of the object. This might also be a time where you think about some of these symbols that might represent your person. Do they love flowers? Do you think of them as just kind of like swirly energy? And you can think about using that as a decorative technique. I didn't leave myself a lot of negative space, so I'm just gonna erase half of my face, and that half is gonna be my decorative section. If you at any point feel the need to erase something that you've done, you've carved a line that you don't like, you've squished a piece you don't want, water is your best friend. You get your finger wet, you rub it right over where you've worked, and that's gonna kind of disappear. So I'm gonna take a second and erase a portion of my drawing. And when we're thinking about our patterns, it can be really free-form and all over, or if you'd like, you can kind of divide up your space so that you have different areas to work in. I'm going to give myself a few sections for pattern making. And in those, I'm going to choose a few different techniques. So I think in one, I'm going to use a carving technique. And I'm just going to carve some bubbles because I like water, I guess. And something I do as I go, you may or may not see my hands in the frame. As I get those little beads of clay on the tip of my modeling tool, I'm just wiping them off so that they don't drag through the next time I go to make a mark. And then in my next section, I'm going to use my shell to make some indented patterns. So I'm going to decide where that shell is going to get pressed in to give us some texture. And then I'm going to carve myself out one more spot to do a little additive work. So that is our coils, our beads, whatever shape you'd like to make with your clay, and scoring and slipping. So roughing up that clay and adding some water so that they stick together. If anyone has any questions at any point, you can give us a holler in the chat or unmute yourself and come ask them. We are deep into this project, but that does not mean that you need to be quite at the phase I'm at yet. I've been working fast while I've been talking to you guys. So if you're still drawing, that's awesome. If you're rolling out your slab, great work. If you're transferring, that's great as well. Wherever you're at is a great place to be. And since we're kind of into work time right now, I want to give you some time where I'm not just rambling at you about clay. Maybe we can put on some music, but feel free to flag us down if you need any help with anything. right, how's everybody doing? Is anyone feeling like they're finished? Do people need some more time? Fun, awesome. Does anyone want to share where they're at right now? I know it's a little tricky with clay because we're working flat, but sometimes it's fun to see what ideas other people have come up with.
I definitely do.
Gabe, let's see it.
Oh no, I almost broke it. So it's coming along. Oh, actually. Let's see.
Oh, Rosie, awesome.
Goodness.
That uses so many of those techniques we talked about. What did you use to make those patterns? Which tool did you use?
Okay, so for the like cross hatching kind of a thing, I just used the wood tool you gave me, the little side. And then for like the little dots, I used my like garlic press tool.
Awesome.
And then the rest, I used the back of the pencils for like the little like craters kind of a thing. And then just really the clay tools, the wood ones for the rest.
Awesome. That was a great way to use all of those techniques. Do you have a favorite found object that you used?
Not really.
That's
They're
all
all
right. All right. And Gabe, maybe we can take a look at yours that you were holding up.
Okay, fine. It's not going to be as cool as Rose, but it'll be fine. I'm just kidding. I'm working on hair right now, and it's getting there.
Look at that.
The little doodles.
All right.
I think the drawing was weird, but
Cool. And what tools have you been using to do that carving?
I dipped my tool in coffee because I didn't have water. And then I did some smooth coating for the face, and then I just did a bunch of little snaky coils for the hair. I made a bunch of them.
Awesome. Snaky coils for hair is awesome. I threw a little curved coil in mine because I have curly hair. Even though my portrait is far from representational, I thought it was fun to pull a characteristic that I have and put it on there. Awesome. We have another one. Usha, do you want to share a little bit about yours?
This is Navi. She's going to share what
awesome.
she did.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Navi.
So I'm still on the decorating part, but since I really like abstract, I drew over my design because I didn't like it, and I'm just making weird things.
Making weird things. What is that thing you built on the corner? Do you want to tell us about that?
So I decided to make something like a sand dune, not really like that, but like a sand dune tower, and I made little holes in the thing, and then I curled up the thing.
The top.
Yeah, the top.
Awesome. That is really dimensional, which is great. I know that we've been talking about tiles and we're working flat with a little bit of dimension, but that's a beautiful way to really make a sculptural piece that stands up. So awesome job with that. All right, we'll have a few more minutes of working. If anyone at any point wants to share, give us a holler. If anyone has any questions, give us a holler. If you feel like you're done with your tile and you have some extra clay, feel free to make any small little funny things. These will all dry and be solid objects within the next few days.
Once it's dry, what are you going to do with it?
Once it's dry, what are you going to do with it? That's a great question. Once it is dry, you can paint it, which you can do with acrylic paint. That's awesome. You can leave it just as it is with raw clay. And then it's up to you what the object is. I would say that while we are using clay, and sometimes we think of clay as things like cups and plates, this is not the type of clay that we want to use for food or anything we're drinking. So it's more of a decorative piece.
Loud and clear. Do not eat.
Yeah, do not eat your clay, please. Do not eat off your clay either. And this clay will take a day or two to dry.
Insisting I show my piece, which is
yes.
her actually. Very unimaginative, straight to 2D art.
I think it is beautifully imaginative.
And it looks like I'm bald. I don't see any hair.
It looks like she's bald because there's no hair.
We've learned all different ways that we can add hair if we want, but that's a really great way when we think about portraiture. Sometimes doing these really, really detailed shaded drawings. Oh, there we go. Thanks, John. That's one great way to show artwork and to show a person. But sometimes when we pull into like a really reductive style, that means we're gonna just transform it into really basic shapes. That's another great technique for showing artwork and to create a portrait. You don't have to get the exact right shape. You don't have to have shading. Sometimes just giving us really simple things like an oval or an almond shape for an eye really defines a face beautifully.
Sam, share that piece again.
Awesome. That's really great. You have such great depth and texture in that. Is there anything you want to share about it? It's okay if not.
Yes. So, the nose is actually an engraving of a monkey. And I used it as a nose for the rest of the self-portrait.
That's awesome. What type of monkey? Is this a toy?
No, it's a cup, kind of, and I just placed it in the clay. It's a monkey.
That's super cool. What a creative way to create a nose. I don't think I've ever made a monkey nose in my life. I'm looking at Gabe. I don't think Gabe's ever made a monkey nose.
Oh, I've made plenty of monkey
You've made plenty of monkey noses? All right, I don't know.
But Sam wrote the book on it.
Yep. You saw it here first, the first ever monkey nose.
Cheryl, yours is beautiful as well.
Oh,
I'm trying to get it up there.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Ooh.
How about
Very
unblur my
nice.
background? This is actually Sam, and there's a piece of hair. Right, his hair is super straight, but he has like one little curl that he loves. So that's the only 3D part I got so far, except the eyes. I have eyes, but everything else is like really flat.
That's a really great technique to like draw out one specific feature. If everything is flat and that one feature is built up, our eyes are going to go right to that, and it seems really important, which is a great...
Yeah, the curl, and plus it says S.
Oh, yes. Awesome. All right, so we are at the point we have just a few minutes left and we're gonna wrap it up. So maybe we'll do about 2 more minutes of working and then we're gonna come back as a group. All right, everyone. So with just a few minutes left, we're going to start wrapping up this part of the art party, which means you do not need to be finished with your piece. You can continue working on this after we hang up. If you want to pause on this project and come back to it later, my suggestion would be to take your piece of clay. If you have a spray bottle, give it a little spritz of water. If you don't, maybe just get your fingers wet and splatter it a little bit and slide that into your Ziploc and seal it up. And that's going to keep your clay from drying out on you so that you can come back and work on it later. If you want to paint your clay, let it dry maybe overnight, maybe over 2 nights. You'll notice that the clay feels wet to the touch right now. As it dries, it'll still feel kind of cold. The color is going to start to change. When it feels really solid, when you touch it and it's no longer cold, it's just room temperature. It's going to be a lighter gray. It is fully dry and it is good to paint. Does anyone have any last questions before I bring Gabe back on screen to wrap us all up?
Molly, you said to use acrylic paint on the clay? Okay.
Yeah, I think acrylic is usually best for clay. If you have something watery based like watercolor, it's going to seep in, which can be a really interesting technique, but it's harder to control on the clay.
Thank you.
All right, come on down.
Alrighty, y'all. Amazing, amazing job. I had a blast watching you get messy. Feel free to look at your fingies. Let's use part of the Messy Fingies Club. I like to see it.
A side note to that, clay can sometimes make your skin feel pretty dry. Give it a wash and put some lotion on there if it's bothering you.
Or not.
Or not.
Or keep crusty fingers for the rest of your life. Awesome. So, we can't wait to see what you made with us today. Everyone that's participated with us before is doing a great job of sending us artwork. In order for us to share it and kind of view it and show it to all of you once it's in its finished form, we'd love for you to do it through our website. So in the chat, we'll be putting a link so you can kind of like send us your work, but also document a release. That's just so you can share artwork so everyone can see it. And that's also so we can share it with you, which is really awesome. And then after the event, like before, if you participated before, a survey will be emailed out to you. We would love to hear your feedback so you can continue to make these events what you want them to be. We've been loving having you, and we'd love to hear your feedback. That will also be put in the chat as a link. So two links. One to send us artwork, because we want to see it when it's completed, whenever you feel like it, and the one for a survey. We'd love to hear your feedback. So thanks to you, Molly. You did great.
Gabe.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm just kidding. We worked together. I'm being sassy. She did a great job. Right, everyone? Awesome. So, and then our next art party is August 25th at 6:30 p.m. Same time next month, August 25th, with Karen, where you can explore creative writing and collage. You'll be able to RSVP starting tomorrow, and we hope to see you all again. So thanks again for joining us. We had so much fun. You did an amazing job. Thanks for getting messy with us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.